morning, everyone. Wow, thank you so much for inviting me to come here, everyone. Your hospitality has been fantastic. Really enjoyed my time here in Nashville with you all. And hi, yes, my name is Guy Hammond. I'm a Canadian evangelist, but also the executive director of this organization that I started several years ago called Strength and Weakness Ministries. And as Matt said, the organization's primary purpose is to offer pragmatic help and assistance and encouragement to our brothers and sisters in the faith who come from a homosexual background, but now who, as followers of Jesus, still live with unwanted same-sex attractions. And it's turned into an educational tool where we talk about how to share the good news of Jesus with our gay friends and neighbors in a manner that doesn't lower the traditional biblical sexual ethic, that we stay true to what the scriptures teach, but at the same time we uplift the love, mercy, and compassion of Jesus. And there's a way to do that. And so that's what I spend my time doing. And Matt's right. When I started the ministry back in 2006, I really wasn't planning on it becoming very much, but it's really grown over the years to where we're helping now thousands of Christians in over 90 countries around the world. And probably our biggest ministry actually is our ministry for parents, because we've got so many parents in our brotherhood of churches around the world where their kids are coming out or questioning things. And so we want to be a support to mom and dad also. And so that's what we are striving to do. I just thought, we as a church needed to do better than what we were doing on this regard. I felt like there was a whole demographic of the world's population we were largely missing. Not because we didn't love or care, it's just that we just didn't know what to say. And so I'm really hoping that for those of you who came here on Friday and Saturday, that you learned some things, that you heard some bridge building language, you got some perspective on how we can, again, uplift the love of Jesus and hold to what the Bible teaches, but that this become and be a safe, loving, caring environment for LGBTQ people to come in here and to learn what it means to follow Jesus. And they would be welcome guests here, and you would all be kind and loving and non-judgmental and hospitable while they're doing so. And we would give people time, room, and space to figure things out as they try to untangle their lives to know what it means to be able to follow Jesus. So thank you for those of you who came here, and amen. And I just want to say thank you to your senior leadership. Thank you to Matt, and thank you to the elders here and your board. Thank you for having the faith and the courage to say, hey, we're going to talk about this stuff, because it's multifaceted, it's controversial, it's countercultural, the things we talked about. These have not been easy conversations to have, but it took a lot of faith and courage for you as a church to say, listen, we want to talk about this, and so I'm so glad you did. So thank you. The whole reason why I do this is because I started participating in homosexuality when I was 12 years old, and it continued until I was in my mid-20s. Through my teen years, I had a boyfriend for about 10 years, from right up until I was around 22 years old. And by the time this picture was taken, that's me in the middle there with all that hair. I don't know where all the hair went, but anyway, I just, had given up on any idea of God, church, and Bible. I just thought, there's no place there for me in church. And so I moved to Canada's largest city, Toronto, where I just started crossing a lot of dangerous lines and acted out hundreds of times with different men, and, knew that by the time I was 22, I knew my life was in trouble. I knew I needed some help and intervention. Just didn't know where to go for that. And of course, in God's perfect timing, he sent somebody who I'd gone to high school with, who invited me to this new church that had just started in downtown Toronto called the Toronto Church of Christ. And I was like, oh, church, man, I know all about those people. They're all judgmental, homophobic, and bigoted, so I don't know if I want to go to your church. But, the Holy Spirit kept nagging at me, and he kept asking, so I was like, okay, I'll go. And anyway, I loved it, loved what I saw and heard. I was like, this is not like the church I grew up in. But it took 2 years of hearing the message, 2 years of learning about Jesus, 2 years of building relationships with Christians, until I finally decided I wanted Jesus more than I wanted my gay life. And so I studied the Bible and was baptized on August 15th, 1987. That's 35 years ago. And I can tell you I have not participated in any kind of homosexual activity since my conversion 3.5 decades ago. But it's amazing what God has done over the years. So I'll tell you this, here's the thing. I don't know why God works the way he does. If I was God, trust me, we would do things very differently down here. But, the truth is, I'm just as attracted to men today as I was when I became a Christian 35 years ago. Hasn't even altered. And I did spend a lot of years in my my early Christian life, really trying to become attracted to girls, somehow thinking that that would be the ultimate success in my Christianity if I could become attracted to a girl. But, that just, for whatever reason, God was like, no, Guy, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. And so this is just a burden I've carried since my youth. But it's one that, I gladly take these feelings, emotions, desires that I've had since my youth and gladly and willingly submit them to the cross and to following Jesus. I'm not a gay Christian. I'm not an ex-gay Christian. Listen, all I am is a Christian. Jesus is my identity. He's the one I've decided to follow. He's the one I've given my life to. And I'm just doing the best I can, like the rest of you, to live a holy life and to honor God with my life. And hopefully take this mess that you see up here and try to use a little bit of my mess to be able to bless a few other people. So that's all that's going on there. So one thing that I never thought would happen is I'd get married. I was like, I became a Christian. I just thought I have to be celibate for the rest of my life. I was like, I guess how would I enjoy intimacy with another human being? I'm only attracted to men. I was like, what woman would want to live with this? And how do you even find a girl? I don't even know how to do that. And, but a few years after becoming a Christian, there was this lovely girl in the church. Her name was Kathy. And we just became best friends. And I just so enjoyed our relationship and our friendship. And I started thinking, maybe I can marry her. Like, I'm not attracted to her the way a heterosexually attracted man would be, but I don't know. So that's one thing that's missing. You got me, okay, but I don't know. Can't I enjoy all that life has to offer with another human being? Do I have to miss out on that just because I'm not attracted to her physically? There were so many other things I was attracted to. Okay, you got me. In the physical attraction, I was deficient. But, so anyway, we started dating, and you know what? It ended up working out pretty good. Kathy and I got married, had a family. There's Kathy and I and our 4 kids, and, God was just so great to me, and I just love showing the picture of my family because I'm like, wow, God, look what you did for me. Like, I so don't deserve this. I mean, here was a guy who, up until 24 years old was acting out sexually with hundreds of guys, in parked cars and public bathrooms, and my life was a complete train wreck. And here I am now, and I get this. I'm like, God, you are too good. I so don't deserve this. But, my family is just a real blessing. Love all my kids. Of course, Kathy became very ill a few years ago, and wasn't expecting that. She was a very healthy and active woman, but we found out in 2017 that she had stage 4 brain cancer, and she wasn't really given very much time to live. The doctor said, if you do chemo and radiation, we might be able to get you a year, but other than that, you're going to die in about 6 months, and there's just nothing we can do for you. And so anyway, that really shook our family up, of course, but Kathy was a very faithful, godly, courageous woman, loved the Lord. She went out with great courage. She ended up passing away in the summer of 2018. And, of course, just miss her tremendously. But Kathy was such a pragmatic woman, and she was very insistent that I get married again. And so about 2 weeks before she died, she called me into the hospital room, and she was like, honey, please promise me you'll get married again. I was like, come on, where am I going to find a wife? I'm 55 years old, and, where am I going to find a wife at this stage of my life? And honey, by the way, can we both remember I'm not even attracted to women? Wasn't it a miracle enough that I found one wife who was willing to live with this? What are the chances I'd find 2? But I went back to the hospital the next day, and she had made a list of pre-approved names of women. I know, right? Pre-approved names of women she thought I could marry. Of course, sisters in the church who had either never married themselves or were widowers. And we laughed and kind of joked about it. I was like, you're crazy. I'm not marrying any of these women. And she died a few weeks later. And as time went on, as the months passed, I started feeling pretty lonely. And I thought, if I live the average lifespan of a Canadian male, I got another 20, 25 years left in me maybe. So do I really want to do this alone? And thought, okay, it's time for me to start looking. So I thought, where am I going to find a girl? And I thought, oh yeah, my wife made that list. So I got out the list, and I just thought, well, you know what? Hey, I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down. Someone's going to say yes, right? And so the very first name on the list was a lovely lady. Her name's Laura. Her husband had passed of cancer a few years earlier also. And we knew Laura, not really well, but, she came to visit Kathy a few times in the hospital, and I went to her husband's funeral. And so anyway, I just called Laura up, and I said, hey, can I take you out for dinner? She lived a few hours from where I lived, and she said, sure. So I drove out, and I thought, well, I just don't have the time to beat around the bush here, And so even before the appetizers got to the table, I just said, hey, listen, here's why I'm here. Life is short. You're lonely, I'm lonely. My wife is dead, your husband is dead. And there's a list. And right now, you're number one. So I don't know. You want all of this or don't you? Let's just figure this out here. Anyway, she said yes. And Laura and I have been married for 3 years. So I really consider myself to be truly a living, breathing miracle. I'm not even attracted to women. And I've had 2 wives, right? Oh, my goodness sakes. Hey, I'm so sorry that Laura couldn't be with me on this trip. She's not always able to travel with me. But, I was just bragging on you guys yesterday to her, just telling her how amazing I've enjoyed my time with you. And she certainly sends her love. I want to start by telling you a story. There's an ancient legend about a Persian king who was discouraged, dejected, and sad. And he called for his chief advisors, the wise men, and his court wizards, and he charged them to invent a motto that would ease his pain during times of difficulty. And he imposed 3 conditions relative to the wording of this motto. Number 1, not only did it have to encourage him in times of trouble, but secondly, the sentiment also had to be appropriate to keep him humble and grateful during times of prosperity and happiness. Thirdly, the motto had to be concise enough to be engraved on a ring, which he intended to wear on his middle finger. So the wise men, they thought, and they all got together. They had meetings, but nobody could come up with a motto meeting all 3 conditions. But finally and unexpectedly, the king's daughter presented him with a ring bearing these magic words: even this shall pass away. In other words, nothing lasts forever. Not sorrow, not fame, not fortune or pain. Nothing lasts forever. And if it's true that all good things must come to an end, then certainly it must also be true that all bad things must come to an end. Now, bad times and problems and times of crisis, oh my goodness, they surround us, don't they? This has always been the case throughout human history. John Keats, one of Britain's greatest poets, he was a great observer of the natural world. And from that, he acquired the view that life in the main was mostly about hardship and suffering. He said, quote, people were perpetually straining at particles of light in the midst of a great darkness. He wrote that in 1818. Sounds like 2022. Not much has changed over the years. There are not only global challenges, but just everyday challenges. Problems surround us. In fact, I would think that it's fair to say that life is just made up of trying to find solutions to problems. As soon as one problem is solved, there's another problem to take care of. I don't think there's ever been a day in my life when I could say, I absolutely have no problems today. And it requires faith and courage just to live a regular life. Troubles come in different forms and in different measures, don't they? More month than money, unemployment, difficulty in relationships, that aching back, that broken down car, that Visa bill whose amount due never seems to decrease. When we're lonely or isolated, when we're filled with guilt or shame, when people we trusted disappoint us or we disappoint ourselves, when we feel like the church has let us down, or when we can't seem to move those mountains no matter how hard we pray. These are the challenges that everyone here this morning is familiar with from one degree to another. But then there are other times in life where things get really serious. When we face life-altering crisis. When it takes a more serious faith. A critical illness in yourself or someone that you love. Bankruptcy. Separation. Divorce. Chronic pain. Failure. Addiction. Depression. Death of a loved one. You know, in crises like these or others enter your world, I think it's helpful for us to remember that God has designed it so that we can recover. That whatever the crisis is, even this shall pass away. And the Bible, time and time again, promises us this. We've got examples all throughout Scripture. You know, we got the story of Job. Of course, Job was a man who was plagued with numerous different incredibly challenges. You know, he had boils all over his body. He's sitting there scraping the boils off his body. And he had 3 friends who came to visit him. Now, his 3 friends, you know, were really the guy's worst enemies, really. I mean, these guys were not the brightest lights in the harbor. They never really had very much good to say. Zophar was one of his friends. Zophar, you know, it seems like every time you read about him speaking, you feel like, you know, the elevator's just not going all the way to the top. Anyway, the poor guy was trying. But, you know, even though he didn't really have much to say, there is one truth, one prophetic truth that he did utter. I mean, even a stopped clock is right twice a day. And so Zophar says this in Job 11:16. He says, Job, you will surely forget your trouble, recalling it only as waters gone by. In other words, Job, don't worry, this will pass away. Have you ever committed a sin so grievous that you thought you could never be forgiven, you could never recover? Well, after David had committed adultery with Bathsheba and had her husband murdered on the front lines, the Lord said this regarding the punishment that David would face in 1 Kings 11:39. He says, I will humble David's descendants because of this, but not forever. In other words, even my punishment will pass away. Regarding how God treats all of us after a time of sin and rebellion, it says in Psalm 30, verse 5, for his anger lasts only a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may stay for the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. In other words, even this shall pass away. So it is a biblical truth that nothing in this world, no problem, no trouble, no crisis lasts forever. Even this shall pass away. I believe this is a gift from God, and it needs to encourage us when we are in the midst of our challenges in life. You know, the different things we face, I mean, they can really mount on us, can't they? Okay. I'm not going to worry about the slides. Just get things ready for my video. Okay, good. Yeah. What about physical pain? Yeah. Ever had a migraine headache that you thought would never go away? It did. Ever had a broken bone, a twisted ankle, a sty in your eye, a bad toothache that you thought you'd never heal from? You did. Ever had a cold that just seemed to go on and on and on, and you swear it would never end? You're not coughing anymore. And at those times when nothing else seems to help, not the power of positive thinking, not drugs, not anything, at such times God wants to remind you that no pain lasts forever. Job's discomfort did eventually go away. Even Christ's agony on the cross, mercifully, lasted only 6 hours. What about anxiety? Whew. Boy, watching the news can leave you with some anxiety, can't it? Yet I can tell you that whatever the world is upset about today, it will soon be forgotten. You know, for instance, if I were to say the word Vietnam, you know, to some, you would think of one of the most brutal wars ever fought and the deaths of over 1.5 million people. But there's another demographic in this room, another generation, who would mostly think of a place with an exotic culture with amazing beaches and a place you'd love to vacation someday. You see, events that once caused the world tremendous anxiety in years past are long gone and almost forgotten. I mean, even 9/11 now is taught as a piece of history. What about temptation? Even here, God promises relief. No temptation lasts forever. You know, there was a time in Jesus' life when he was tempted by the devil himself, time and time again. Satan tried his best to get Jesus to sin, but time and time again, Jesus held on to righteousness and refused to give in. I don't know what it would be like to be tempted by the devil himself. I don't know how things work in the spiritual world. Like, when you get tempted with stuff, is it always just Satan himself who comes, or does he like kind of, say, hey, demon number 73, I want you to go get this guy here. And, you get these demons to come at you. But what would it be like to get Satan himself to come at you? In Luke 4:13, it says, when the devil had finished all his tempting, he left him for a more opportune time. I mean, think about that. All his tempting. Imagine Satan coming after you one-on-one, and he's going to throw everything at you. But, he ended up leaving Jesus alone because Jesus stayed true, didn't give in. And Satan was like, oh, for pity's sakes, I have tried everything with this guy. All right, nothing's working. I'm done. No, sorry, guys, I tried. I don't know. I'm done. So he went away. Now, he was going to wait for a more opportune time. So Satan does come back again. But the temptations eventually stopped. Not only will God not let you be tempted beyond what you can handle, but he'll always give you a way out. No temptation lasts forever. You just have to, stay true for a little while. Sometimes we get in ourselves in situations we're like, no, I can't help myself. I just have to look at that website. I just have to do it. I can't control myself. No, I just have to have that toothpaste out of the tube moment with my husband, or with my wife, or with my kids, or with my parents. I'm so mad, I'm so upset, I'm so angry. I just have to slam the door, yell and scream, drop some words I'm not supposed to say. I just have to do it. No, you don't. Calm yourself. The temptation will leave. It's not going to be there forever. No, I just have to gossip. I just heard this news, and Mama was a gossiper, and I'm a gossiper. And so whenever I hear something, I just have to pass that along. And so I just have to do it. No, you don't. Shut your mouth. If you can just hang on for a couple of minutes, the temptation will leave. No temptation lasts forever. Now, it's true that Satan may come back, and he'll look for a more opportune time, but you take it temptation by temptation. But, you're not a victim. You can control yourself. Slow down a little bit. Calm yourself. In a few minutes, the temptation will be gone. Whenever we're facing the enticement to sin, just remember, if you just wait a few minutes, pause long enough, even this shall pass away. What about sorrow? Yeah, that's a different kind of pain, isn't it? Sometimes more hurtful than physical suffering. Sometimes we can go through a grief that is so intense that it makes us physically ill. Ever been there when you couldn't eat, you couldn't sleep, you couldn't face people because you were so emotionally disoriented? I've been there. I think one of the things that we need to try to remember is that God has made it so that regardless of what we're going through, no matter how difficult and challenging things become, we should never have an excuse to stop living like a Christian. Experiencing crisis and difficulties in our lives should not be reasons why we stop living like Jesus. As I watched my wife Kathy live her final year, I would say, one of the things that she taught me more than anything else is that she was not going to let any circumstances or her problems be so dire that she would stop living like a Christian. I personally found it very convicting. I thought if I was the one dying, I would not be this positive. Experiencing crisis, we can't use these as reasons to stop following Jesus. With Kathy, by about January of 2018, by then she was in a wheelchair, really unable to take care of herself, and we were all my kids had come home, and we were all trying to spend as much time with Mom as possible before she passed. And the Toronto Church of Christ is a large church, 1,200 people, and most of the time they meet in satellite communities around the greater Toronto area. But then a couple times a year, they'll try to get the entire church together at some opera house or something like that. And so in January of 2018, that is what was happening. And Kathy thought, well, this would be my last time to be able to go and be with the Toronto church together. So I would like to go to that. So I was like, honey, no, we don't have to. It was about 2 hours away. I was like, we don't have to go to that, sweetheart. Like, you know what? You're in a wheelchair. It's a lot of work. It's exhausting. Let's just stay home. She goes, no, I want to go. I was like, honey, no, it's not necessary. She says, I'm going. I'm like, okay, then I guess I'll just put the wheelchair in the back of the pickup and we'll go. So we went to this thing, and it was great. And, Kathy got to say goodbyes to a lot of people. And on the way home from that, we were driving along this highway, and she suddenly went into a full body seizure. And she just started shaking uncontrollably, and she curled all up, and her hands became disfigured, and her face became disfigured. And, my son Greg was in the back seat, and, he was screaming and crying. And I was like, okay, I just gotta get to a hospital. Where's a hospital? I was already going 120 kilometers an hour, and I was driving. I thought, well, I don't want to go faster. This is going to turn into something dangerous. Okay, so I'm just going to pull off on the side of the highway, 911, call an ambulance. They'll find us. So pretty quickly, the ambulance arrived, and Kathy continued to seize, and they put her in the back of the ambulance. They said, follow us. So I followed them to the hospital, and by the time I'd parked the car and got in there, Kathy was lying on a gurney in the hallway, and the seizures had stopped, but she was just exhausted. So I was standing there with her, and a few minutes later, the ambulance attendant who had been in the back of the ambulance with Kathy came, and he said, Mrs. Hammond, I'm going now on my shift again. You're in good hands. But before I leave, I just want to tell you that I will never forget what you told me in the back of that ambulance, and I'm really going to think about this. And so thank you very much. And then he walked away. So I looked down at Kathy, and I was like, what did you say to the guy in the back of the ambulance? She said, well, in between my seizures, I just told him that I was dying and that it was okay. I wasn't afraid because I'm a Christian, and I know that when I die, I'm going to be in heaven forever, and so I'm fine with dying. And I told him that what he needed to do was to start reading his Bible and find a church to go to, because when it comes his turn to die, she wanted him to be as secure as she was. I was like, I have not shared my faith with anybody in months. And you're inviting people to church and sharing your faith and talking to people about Jesus in between seizures? I'm like, who are you? But she just refused to allow a crisis in her life to be a reason to stop living like Jesus. She was also very intent on trying to fit in as much life as possible. So that same month, we live, of course, it was January, and I live 2 hours north of Toronto. And so the average temperature in January is minus 30, minus 40, and we have a lake near our home. And my kids and I, we love to go skating on the lake and play hockey and whatnot. And so one January afternoon, my son Wyatt called up and he said, hey, Dad. I'm like, yeah, because I'm going out on the lake to go skating. I'm like, all right. And then about a minute later, he's like, hey, Dad. What? Mom says she wants to go skating too. Tell her no. She's in a wheelchair and has brain cancer, and it's minus 40 out. We're not going outside. Okay. But a minute later, hey, Dad. What? You better get down here. I go downstairs. Kathy's trying to put on a coat. I'm like, what are you doing? She goes, I want to go skating. I'm like, you're in a wheelchair. She said, well, can't we just take the truck out on the ice? Because we do that up there. You can drive out on the ice. We go ice fishing and things like that. I know, we're weird. And she can't we take the truck out on the ice and get the wheelchair out and somebody just push me around? Like, good Lord, woman, you're going to kill me. Like, what? I'm like, all right, let's do it. So we loaded the wheelchair into the back of the pickup and got Kathy into the truck and drove the truck out onto the ice. And, you know, my son Wyatt put on his skates and started pushing her around, you know, and she had her arms out and she was like, woohoo! Like, you know, she was just having this great time, you know, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, who does this stuff? Well, about 5 months later, we were in the hospice facility. The doctor came in and said to us, this is it. I think you only have a few days left. And so I went up to Kathy, and by then she was completely paralyzed. She could only move one arm. That's the only thing she could move. She could barely speak. I said, honey, is there anything you want to do before you die? Anything you want? What can I do for you? And she said, I want to go swimming. I thought she was going to ask for like a popsicle or something, you know? I was like, oh, bless her heart. She hasn't been out of this bed in like 2 months now. Obviously, we're not going to go swimming. I thought, well, I'm not going to be the bearer of bad news. So I went out and I found the doctor. And I said, hey, can you maybe break it to her? Like, she thinks she can go swimming. And that's her final wish. And the doctor said, well, why not? I was like, I don't know, isn't it obvious? And the doctor said, what's the worst that could happen? I was like, that's a good point. So I hired a 6-man ambulance crew and a nurse to come with us, and I got her mother who was still living, and her brothers and sisters, and my kids, of course. We got some disciples together, and we all went to this lake, and we got food, and we turned it into this big picnic, and the ambulance attendants had to carry her right into the water and hold her up. And she got about a half hour out there, and she could only move one arm. But, you know, she just had this huge smile on her face. She knew she was going to die in a matter of days. But her final wish, you know, was just to go swimming. You know, I know that life is difficult. I know that in times of crisis, things can seem enormously painful. But we can't ever allow those things to give us the permission to stop living our lives with courage and faith. A couple months before Kathy died, we did a little interview with her. We have supporters, people who send us money and whatnot to help us do our ministry. And so we did this little video, this little interview, asking her some questions, you know, so we could send this out to our supporters. And in closing, thought I would just share just like 3 minutes of this video of Kathy. And it's being asked about her, you know, what is she leaving her kids behind, and, you know, in regards to her faith, and what are her thoughts about dying and going to heaven. And I thought I would share that with you as we close.
What would you say that you'd like your children to think of you as they're going through this time of watching their lives unfold before them? What would you say you'd want them to take away from your life and your legacy?
That's great. Yeah, I thought a lot about that, actually. And I mean, I obviously want them to love God. I want them to want to be with God. And that is what I think every day, to the point where I think it's made them actually think I'd rather be with God than with you. And they voiced that. So I had to be careful, because I do want to be with God.
Pretty polite.
That's a tough one.
It is, though. It's a real pull. Like, it's a real, you know, we all know we're going to die. We all know we're going to face that. We all know if we're Christians, we're going to get to go and spend time with God. And it's exciting to think about. I mean, he promises he's got this place prepared for us, and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I want my kids to think that's a place I want to be. I can't wait to get there. But yeah, I want my kids to know that the time God gave me here on earth, I used well, and made good choices with that, and poured myself out if I could be so bold as to, say that, but that my desire truly was to be with God.
Wow, look at you, honey. Wow. Go, honey. It's like you're in the Olympics. Oh my gosh. You are definitely getting all 10s from me, honey. Wow. Amazing. Oh, yes. There you go. Can you do it twirly? Oh my goodness. Wow. Oh my gosh, honey. How you doing, hon? Yeah, good. All right. Hi, honey. You're looking great, hon. You okay?
Yep.
Only walking through this world for a moment. I know every day's a gift from you. I wanna turn these minutes into memories. So when my day comes and my time is through, let it be love I leave behind. Lord, I'm praying this will be the story that's mine. The way that I remembered, that my life be defined by the love I leave behind, the love I leave behind. Whoa, 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 whoa. Don't wanna spend my time on things so temporary, wasted on what's only here and gone. My days are yours to use to make a difference. I wanna give my life for what goes on and on. Let it be love.
You see, even in crisis, you can still share your faith. You can still help others. You can still be kind and forgive and be positive in your outlook on life. You can still serve your community and live out your Christian faith. In fact, if there was ever a time to let your light shine to a dark and dying world, a world that is terrified of crisis, it is when we as Christians are in crisis to show the world that we are not of this world. So, what's your problem this morning? Financial insecurity, perhaps. Even this shall pass away. Unhappy romance, perhaps. A broken home, perhaps. Unemployment. Maybe you're in school thinking you'll never graduate. Don't worry. Even this will pass away. Are you lonely this morning? Are you grieving the loss of someone that you loved very much? Even this will pass away. Listen, folks, all life is fleeting. Remember this, only heaven is lasting. Only love lasts forever. Only God is from everlasting to everlasting. Only his Son, Jesus Christ, our Savior, is without end. And it is these things that the Christian pins his and her hopes and aspirations, because these divine things shall never pass away. Meanwhile, this side of the grave, while nothing is going to last forever, not your physical pain, your emotional pain, your anxieties, your temptations, even your terminal illnesses. Like the ancient Persian king who needed daily reminders, we too need to keep reminding ourselves amid our crisis that even this shall pass away. Brothers and sisters in Nashville, I've heard about you for many years. I've heard about this church. I've heard about your faith, your courage, your ups, your downs. I've heard about the kind of impact you've had in this community over the years, which has been significant. But I can't tell you what an enormous privilege and honor it has been for me to not just now hear about your faith, but now get to see it with my own eyes. Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful. Amen.